Oh man, Jumping Flash! Now here's a game that's practically synonymous with the early days of PlayStation. Even if you've never owned a copy of the full version, odds are good that you experienced Jumping Flash in some form or another if you picked up a PlayStation in its first year of release, either through the bundled PlayStation Pix demo disc in North America, or via the Demo 1 sampler in Europe. Jumping Flash is the kind of game that really leaves a lasting impression, even if you've only spent a few minutes playing it. Its unique premise, theme, and gameplay make it an easy standout among first-year PS1 games, and many PlayStation fans still consider it a personal favorite, including me. I really like this game. Jumping Flash puts you in control of Robert, an interstellar android bunny cop out to stop space crimes on behalf of Universal City Hall. In each level, your goal is to track down 4 of these jet pod items, which look suspiciously like carrots. On a surface level, Jumping Flash resembles a first-person shooter, since each stage is packed full of enemies that can drain your health while you're hopping around looking for jet pods. You can shoot them if you like, but aiming your primary weapon can be a little difficult if you're accustomed to modern dual-analog FPSs. There's no strafing, and if you want to aim up or down, you actually have to stop in place and hold a shoulder button to center your shots, which is kinda inconvenient. After a few minutes of play, however, you'll realize that shooting is not Jumping Flash's core gameplay mechanic. In fact, combat is mostly optional, and instead, gameplay revolves around environmental traversal using a powerful but initially difficult to grasp jumping mechanic. You can jump pretty high with one press of the X button, but push it again in midair and you'll double jump, and you can even triple jump with the right timing after that. During double and triple jumps, the camera points toward the ground, and you can use Robert's shadow to make a safe landing. The core appeal of Jumping Flash is that you can jump really high, allowing you to cross large stretches of the environment in seconds. After mastering the jumping controls, the main challenge becomes covering the large gaps that span between you and your destination without sacrificing height. This kind of high-elevation gameplay makes for some close calls, especially in later levels when you're crossing bottomless pits. The first-person perspective, combined with the powerful jumping mechanics, really sucks you into the game. There's just something about Jumping Flash that makes you want to really lean into those jumps, despite the game's low-poly presentation, limited draw distance, and minimal focus on realism. Jumping Flash's polished gameplay was no accident, as Sony assembled a dream team of sorts for its development. The game was co-developed in Japan by Exact, an established PC games developer, and Ultra, a computer animation studio. It was Ultra that gave Jumping Flash its unique aesthetic, as the company created its storyline, characters, and 3D animated cutscenes. Unfortunately, it's difficult to track down much concrete information about Ultra's history or its previous creations, given its, extremely generic name. But it's probably safe to say that Jumping Flash was its biggest and most successful project to date, as the studio afterward changed its name to Moo Moo as a tribute to these little guys you see throughout the game.
You ain't done yet.
Development duties were assigned to Exact, or Excellent Application Create Team. Can't argue with a name like that. Prior to designing Jumping Flash's engine and gameplay, Exact produced several games for the X68000 home computer series in Japan. Exact's final release for the platform was Geograph Seal, a game that's widely considered a direct predecessor to Jumping Flash. In Geograph Seal, players control a mobile tank that can leap hundreds of feet in the air. You explore small 3D arenas in search of enemy targets scattered throughout. Once you destroy all targets, you can fight a boss and go to the next level. Playing Geograph Seal for the first time, I was surprised at just how much of its design carried over to Jumping Flash. It's got a double jump, and your view even shifts downward whenever you engage it. You can also bounce on enemies for extra damage, and the controls are basically a direct match for Jumping Flash, right down to the aerial movement mechanics. If anything, Geograph Seal actually has a little bit more variety to it than Jumping Flash. You have multiple primary weapons that you can collect and switch between during each level. There's a couple of corridor-based levels, and even a few rail shooting sequences. And I gotta say, having some actual enemies to fight adds some real tension. In this game, the jet pods fight back, and they're pissed. Geograph Seal uses some pretty advanced programming techniques to push 3D graphics on a platform that was largely known for its shoot-'em-ups and high-quality ports of 2D arcade games. You can see extensive use of techniques like dithering to produce shadows and other effects, and the frame rate often tanks when you jump high in the air, demonstrating just how far the hardware was being pushed. Back in 1994, you might even mistake this for a Super NES game that's using the Super FX chip. You could even say that Geograph Seal looks a little bit like the unreleased Star Fox 2, though that's probably a coincidence. Given just how much of Jumping Flash was built off of Geograph Seal's foundation, I get the feeling that Exact's work on the X68000 was well known to Sony's producers when it came time to assemble Jumping Flash's development team. Sony of Japan's director of entertainment, Koji Tada, ended up enlisting most of Geograph Seal's creative staff for the project, including its director Hiroyuki Saegusa, though Tada ended up assuming director duties himself during Jumping Flash's production. Jumping Flash originally entered development as Spring Man, a technology demo showcased at industry events prior to the PlayStation's launch in Japan. I don't believe that any images or video exist of this early prototype version, which is a shame. Sony's stated goal at the time was to produce a mascot star on the same level as Sonic or Mario, though development was on a pretty tight time frame, so I guess it was spared focus group testing, as this game gets pretty weird. As a result of this unique creative mix, Jumping Flash's top-tier development teams produced something that's nothing like anything else in the 32-bit generation. Graphically, Jumping Flash makes great use of the PlayStation's limited texture memory, creating detailed 3D environments that are often deceptively large and unexpectedly dense. There's some pretty strong theming going on here, with levels ranging from expansive cityscapes to theme parks complete with rideable roller coasters. Even the few corridor shooting levels manage to be unique and memorable. This level, for instance, begins with a simple maze that's full of repetitive rock textures, and then it opens up into an underground aquarium. There's even a little sunken pirate ship. There's really a superb attention to detail across all parts of Jumping Flash's presentation. Listen to the soundtrack and you'll spot a common musical motif that plays over several tracks, tying the experience together in a subtle but effective way. Even the sound effects are spot on and fully suited to the experience. I'm telling you, Jumping Flash is the total package. But is it worth playing today? Well, the graphics are obviously a step back from what we're used to nowadays, but overall Jumping Flash holds up surprisingly well, and many of its core gameplay conceits are actually more relevant today than they were back in 1995. The focus on vertical traversal in particular is something that's much more common in modern-day open-world games, with Insomniac's Spider-Man for the PS4 being a successful recent example. Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed games and Naughty Dog's Uncharted series also emphasize climbing as a core mechanic. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that even if you're a casual player of modern games, you can pick up and play Jumping Flash with no problem. And if you're pressed for time, it won't take you long to beat. You can finish all the levels in half an hour or less if you really hurry, but your first playthrough shouldn't take you more than an hour or two, and you can even save and continue if you need. Once you finish the game, you unlock a second quest that shuffles around the jet pod and item locations. And if you're really hardcore and beat every stage in one sitting without continuing, you'll unlock a ridiculous bonus mode that lets you move at twice the speed and jump up to 6 times in mid-air. So yeah, there's a lot of game here, both for experienced players and for anyone seeing it for the first time. And if you missed out on Jumping Flash the first time around, you'll soon get another chance to check it out. Jumping Flash is one of 20 games included with the PlayStation Classic, a plug-and-play PS1 replica console launching for the 2018 holiday season. And while Sony has announced a drastically different software lineup for the PlayStation Classic's release in Japan compared to other regions, Jumping Flash is among the few games to be featured in both the Japanese and Western lineups, which pretty much canonizes it as both a PlayStation Classic and a highly playable game in its own right.
Let's go, Robert! Jump and go!
Hey, thanks for watching! I know we skipped over a few episodes here, but I figured it was worth covering Jumping Flash while it was fresh in everyone's minds because of the PlayStation Classic. If you've been following the PlayStation Classic since it was announced, let me know what you think of it. Oh, and you should also check out our other videos for coverage of stuff like Battle Arena Toshinden and Rayman. Those are pretty good. See you around!